They said our family was cursed, but I never believed it until the night my brother smiled while burying our father's diary. That's how it all began. A single smile. A smile too calm, too satisfied for a night filled with grief. My name is Lara Wynter, the last daughter of a bloodline everyone in our small coastal town of Ravenshade whispers about the Wynters. For generations, we've been called the family that pays for its sins. Every decade, one Wynter dies mysteriously, and another inherits not just the wealth, but the burden. And this decade, the curse was supposed to be my father's end. Except something about his death didn't feel natural. My brother Ethan and I stood at the edge of the cliff that overlooked the grey waves below. The sea was violent that night, as if the ocean itself mourned. The wind howled around us, carrying salt and secrets. We were the last two Wynters left. Father's sudden heart attack, at least that's what they called it, left me numb. He was a hard man, obsessed with family legacy and the old mansion that loomed over Ravenshade Hill. But he wasn't weak. He wasn't the type to just die. When I looked at Ethan, his face was unreadable. No tears. No trembling hands. Just that faint smile when the coffin lid shut. And then, as if it were routine, he picked up the shovel and began burying Father's journal, the old, cracked leather one Father never let anyone touch. I asked, "What are you doing?" He didn't even look up. "Getting rid of the curse." "The curse? Or the truth?" He chuckled under his breath. "Maybe both." That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked with the weight of memory. The Wynter mansion was over 200 years old, an ancestral labyrinth of portraits, dusty hallways, and echoes. Father's office remained locked, just as he'd left it. Every night at 3 a.m., I'd hear something, the faint sound of footsteps from the second floor, the slow turning of a door handle, and once, a whisper that sounded almost like my name. I told myself it was the wind. I had to. Because if I didn't, I'd start believing the same thing everyone else did, that the Wynter curse was real. But then I found it. A single torn page under Father's desk, written in his familiar, jagged handwriting. "If Ethan ever opens the vault before his time, the curse will not claim me, it will claim him." The vault. The old iron chamber in the cellar. Father said it contained family heirlooms and things better left untouched. Ethan had the key now. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if my brother was the next victim or the cause. 3 days after the funeral, Ethan announced he was taking over the family business, Wynter Shipping Lines. Father had always said the company would pass to me, the one who actually worked for it, the one who earned it. But Ethan stood before the board of directors, confident, smiling, and holding a signed will. A will I had never seen before. He said Father changed it just weeks before his death. And somehow, no one questioned it. Not the board. Not the lawyers. Not even the priest who blessed our father's burial. I did. And when I confronted Ethan, he said something I'll never forget. "Don't dig into what you can't bury, Lara. The Wynter curse doesn't take kindly to curiosity." That night, I went down to the cellar. The air smelled of damp stone and rust. My flashlight flickered as I traced my fingers along the cold iron door of the vault. The carvings around it weren't just decoration, they were symbols. Ancient, almost ritualistic. My father had always been secretive about this place. He called it the heart of our curse. And Ethan, he'd been obsessed with unlocking it ever since we were kids. As I crouched near the door, something shifted in the darkness behind me, a soft scrape, like shoes on stone. I turned. Nothing. Just shadows. But when I rose to leave, my flashlight beam hit something new on the vault door. A fresh handprint. Smudged in red. I stepped back, my pulse hammering. And then, from somewhere upstairs, I heard Ethan's voice echo faintly. "You shouldn't have come down here, Lara." I ran upstairs, but the mansion was silent. Ethan's room was empty. His car, gone. The front door wide open. Only the sea's roar answered me. In that moment, I realized something chilling. Ethan hadn't been asleep when I came down here. He knew. And whatever he was doing with Father's vault, it wasn't just about power or inheritance. It was something darker. Something that had been waiting for this moment for generations. Because when I looked back at the cellar door, the iron carvings were glowing faintly like veins pulsing with life. And that's when it hit me, maybe the curse wasn't on our family. Maybe it was our family. Curses don't kill people, Father used to say. Greed does. The curse just finishes what greed begins. For the first time in my life, I was starting to believe him. After that night in the cellar, when I found the glowing handprint and heard Ethan's voice echo from nowhere, things began to shift in the Wynter mansion. At first, it was small things. My bedroom mirror cracked down the center without a sound. The family portrait in the hallway fell, only Ethan's face in the painting was slashed open by the glass. And Father's office door, which had been locked since the funeral, suddenly stood ajar one morning, the key still dangling from the lock. But when I entered, the room smelled faintly of burnt paper, and on the desk sat a single matchstick. Ethan was the only one who smoked. Over breakfast, I asked him directly. "Were you in father's office last night?" He didn't even look up from his plate. "No." "Why?" I stared at the faint ash on his sleeve. "No reason." He smiled the same hollow smile he wore at the funeral. "You're getting jumpy, Lara. You always were." Something about the way he said always chilled me. As if he'd been waiting for me to lose control. That morning, I noticed something else. He wasn't wearing father's old signet ring anymore. The gold one engraved with the Wynter crest, a serpent eating its own tail. Instead, he had a new ring, silver, edged with symbols that looked eerily like the ones on the vault door. "Where'd you get that?" I asked. He raised his hand and twisted the ring with a smirk. "Let's just say it's a family heirloom you were never meant to inherit." In the days that followed, Ethan grew different. He started spending hours locked away in father's study, saying he was handling estate paperwork. But whenever I passed by, I heard him talking to someone in a low voice. A man's voice, rough, foreign, and cold. Once, I pressed my ear to the door. "No, she doesn't suspect anything yet." "Yes. The ritual begins after the vault opens fully." "A ritual?" I backed away quietly, my heart pounding. Later that evening, when I asked him who he'd been speaking to, he said, without missing a beat, "Our lawyer. The company's transition paperwork." But I'd already checked with the firm that morning. They hadn't spoken to him in days. That was the first real red flag, the first undeniable lie. It wasn't just his secrecy. It was how the town started treating him, too. Ethan was suddenly everywhere, meeting with bankers, attending council dinners, even sponsoring the local church's new bell tower. Everyone called him the responsible Wynter heir. Meanwhile, my calls to the company office went unanswered. My paycheck frozen pending signature review. And every time I walked into town, people looked at me like I was the unstable one. One afternoon, I overheard two workers whispering outside the dockyard. "She's the cursed one, not him. He's fixing the family's mess." It burned. Because once upon a time, Ethan and I had been inseparable. When our mother died, it was me who stayed up with him through the nightmares, me who protected him from father's temper. Now, he looked at me like I was just another obstacle between him and his newfound empire. That night, I caught him sneaking out. The clock read 2:46 a.m. when I heard the heavy door creak open downstairs. I peered through the banister. Ethan, in his long coat, clutching a leather satchel, moving fast toward the cellar. I followed, silent as breath. He unlocked the vault again, muttering something under his breath in a language I didn't recognize. The metal shimmered faintly, and this time I saw it clearly. The carvings moved. The serpent's tail coiled and uncoiled like it was alive. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from gasping. When he stepped inside, a strange sound echoed out like a pulse, deep and rhythmic, almost human. Then I heard him say one word that froze my blood. "Father." By dawn, he was gone again. No note, no car in the driveway, no sign of where he'd gone. But when I checked his room, I found something under his pillow, father's journal. The one he claimed he buried. Its pages were half burned, the handwriting frenzied and uneven. On the last surviving page, my father had scrawled. "The curse can be contained, but not broken. If the heir opens the vault for greed, the spirit will feed on blood bound by betrayal." And beneath that, a final line, shaky but deliberate. "If Ethan smiles, run." I closed the book, my throat dry. Outside, the sun was rising over the cliffs, casting the mansion in crimson light. Somewhere in the distance, the sea howled again, louder this time. And in that sound, I swear I heard laughter. Ethan's laughter. To be continued. Part 3: The Heir's Deception. Would you like me to continue with Part 3, The Heir's Deception, next, where Lara discovers what Ethan really unlocked in the vault, and the curse begins to twist into something horrifyingly personal? "It's not the curse that destroys a family," father once wrote, "it's the one who believes they can control it." And now, that someone was Ethan. The morning after I found father's burnt journal, the Wynter mansion no longer felt like home, it felt watched. The portrait's eyes seemed to follow me down the halls. Doors I had locked the night before were left ajar. And in every mirror, for just a second too long, I swore I saw Ethan standing behind me. But what truly shattered me wasn't the haunting, it was the betrayal that followed. I went to town that afternoon, determined to confront the company's board of directors about Ethan's so-called inheritance. Wynter Shipping Lines wasn't just a business, it was father's life work, our legacy. When I arrived, the receptionist's smile faltered. "Miss Wynter, we weren't expecting you." "Where's Ethan?" I asked. "In the conference room. He's presenting the merger." "Merger?" My heart stuttered. No one had told me about a merger. I walked past her before she could stop me and pushed open the boardroom doors. There he was, Ethan Wynter, standing at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, silver ring glinting in the light. Beside him sat 3 strangers in tailored suits, investors from an offshore corporation I didn't recognize. He didn't flinch when he saw me. He just smiled. "Ah, Lara," he said smoothly. "You're just in time to witness the end of the curse." The papers on the table caught my eye, contracts stamped with the seal of Wynter Holdings, now renamed Aravos Maritime Group. And below the signatures was something that made my blood turn cold. Executor, Lara Wynter, deceased. I snatched the document, my voice shaking. "What is this?" Ethan leaned back. "Legal closure. The curse dies with the last winter." "Last winter?" I choked. "What does that even mean?" He stood, walked slowly toward me, and whispered, "You shouldn't exist, Lara. Not legally. Not anymore." Then he handed me an envelope. Inside was a death certificate with my name on it. Lara Elise Wynter, date of death, March 3rd. That was today. My mind spun. "You forged father's will, didn't you?" His silence was louder than any confession. "You killed him," I whispered. That made him smile wider, crueler. "Killed? No. The curse took him. I just guided it. Someone had to. The Winter line was never meant to be shared, Lara. Father knew that. He was grooming the wrong child." My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to drag that smug smile off his face. But the investors were still there, watching silently, their eyes as blank and reflective as mirrors. Ethan gestured toward them. "They've agreed to buy out the estate and the shipping line. In exchange, I become the permanent head of the Winter Foundation. A new era, free from our families' burdens." "And what about me?" I demanded. He turned his back. "The curse has to balance. One heir must be sacrificed so the other can rise." I left the building trembling, tears blurring my vision. He hadn't just stolen the inheritance. He'd erased me. Every account in my name frozen. My ID flagged as invalid. My bank claiming my records no longer existed. In a single day, Ethan had rewritten my existence like I was a ghost still walking the earth. But as much as it broke me, it also woke something else in me. Rage. Pure, unfiltered, icy rage. That night, I returned to the mansion. The storm had rolled in again, wind howling through the corridors, thunder shaking the foundations. I marched straight to Father's study, determined to find something, anything to undo what Ethan had done. That's when I noticed a small, locked drawer under Father's desk. The key wasn't there, but the lock was weak. I pried it open with a letter opener. Inside were 2 things, a rolled parchment sealed in wax, and an old brass key the same shape as the carvings on the vault door. When I broke the seal, I found a family tree drawn in Father's hand. But something about it was wrong. Next to my name Lara Wynter was written a single Latin word, sanctum. And next to Ethan's, hostem. I flipped through Father's old Latin dictionary on the shelf. Sanctum protected. Hostem enemy. My breath caught. The curse wasn't meant to destroy us. It was meant to destroy him. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The window burst open, scattering papers across the room. And in that moment, I felt a presence, cold, ancient, familiar. A whisper slithered through the air, low and desperate. "Finish what he started, or the curse will finish you." The vault key burned in my palm, glowing faintly in the dim light. Outside, the mansion's bells began to toll. 3 times. Father's journal had said it clearly. If the heir opens the vault for greed, the spirit will feed on blood bound by betrayal. And now, I understood. Ethan hadn't just stolen my inheritance. He had unleashed the very curse he thought he could control. I looked toward the cellar door. The air around it pulsed like a heartbeat. I wasn't the cursed one anymore. He was. And this time, I wasn't going to run. Grief makes us fragile. Betrayal makes us dangerous. I wasn't fragile anymore. That night, I stood in the study surrounded by Father's scattered papers, the storm raging like it was tearing open the sky itself. The vault key burned against my palm as if it recognized the blood that held it. I could almost feel Father's presence in the air, stern, protective, warning. Ethan had stolen everything: my name, my inheritance, my future, and worst of all, he had buried me in the eyes of the world. But if he thought erasing me would make me powerless, he'd made his last mistake. Because the Winter curse wasn't his to command. It was mine to end. At first, I didn't know where to start. Every file Ethan had left in the mansion was scrubbed clean, contracts missing, phone logs deleted, even Father's death report rewritten. But the one thing he hadn't touched was Father's hidden archive, the collection of old records and letters kept in the cellar, behind the wall panel near the vault. I spent hours digging through dusty boxes until I found one marked 1887, the first Winter Pact. Inside was a faded letter, sealed with red wax and signed by Edmund Winter, our ancestor, the man who founded the shipping empire. The vault binds what cannot be destroyed. The heir who opens it for greed shall be consumed. But the blood who opens it for truth shall command its wrath. Command its wrath. I reread the line again and again. Could that mean the curse could be controlled, turned against whoever awakened it for selfish reasons? For the first time since father's death, I felt something shift inside me. Not just fear. Not pain. Purpose. I spent the next 2 days preparing. Ethan hadn't returned to the mansion, probably too busy celebrating his new life as the sole heir of a family he didn't deserve. But I knew he would come back eventually. He always did. The vault was his obsession, his addiction. I started searching every corner of the mansion for clues father might have left behind. Every symbol, every inscription, every whisper of our family's past. In the west wing, behind an old portrait of mother, I found a map hand-drawn and marked with the same strange sigils from the vault door. And at the bottom, written in father's handwriting. Lara, if you are reading this, the curse isn't your enemy. It's your weapon. But you must not open the vault until your blood accepts its purpose. I didn't know what that meant then. But I could feel the answer humming in my veins, the same way the vault key thrummed in my hand. On the third night, exhaustion finally caught me. I fell asleep in father's chair, the map spread across my lap. I dreamt of him. He was standing by the sea cliffs, his back to me, the wind whipping his coat. You were always the strong one, Lara, he said without turning. But strength means nothing without fury. Use it. For truth, not vengeance. When I tried to reach him, he turned and I saw Ethan's face instead. His smile, his cold eyes, the silver ring glowing like fire. I woke up gasping. The house was dead silent. But then, faintly, from below the sound of the vault groaning open. I ran to the cellar, my heart pounding. The door was ajar, light spilling from within. And there he was, Ethan, kneeling before the open vault, chanting in that same foreign tongue, the silver ring gleaming as his hand trembled. The air smelled of sulfur and iron. I hid in the shadows, watching as the carvings pulsed with red light. A figure was taking shape inside a shadow with no face, no form, just movement. Then Ethan spoke softly, I offer her name. Her blood. Let the curse claim what's owed. And that's when I saw it, an old photograph on the floor, burned at the edges. It was me. My photograph. He was offering me to the curse. Something in me snapped. I stepped out from the shadows. You really think you can feed the curse my life and walk away clean? Ethan froze. His eyes widened, but then he laughed. You're not supposed to be here. Neither was father when you killed him, I said, my voice trembling. But here we are. The vault light flickered violently as the shadow turned toward us. Ethan's smugness faltered for the first time. You don't understand, Lara. This is how we survive. One must die so the other lives. I walked closer, the vault key glowing brighter in my hand. No, Ethan. One must betray so the other avenges. The vault's pulse quickened. The air felt alive, electric, as if it recognized the truth. And in that moment, I understood. The curse wasn't about death, it was about balance. It didn't punish blood. It punished betrayal. And Ethan had sealed his fate the moment he used mine. He lunged toward me, trying to grab the key, but the vault flared with blinding light. A voice filled the room, deep, ancient, echoing with generations of fury. The blood that betrays its own shall be consumed by its reflection. Ethan screamed as the light surged through him, throwing him back. His reflection twisted on the vault's metal door, screaming, clawing, begging, and then it vanished. He collapsed, shaking, the silver ring cracking in two. When he looked up at me, his eyes were filled with terror. What did you do? I stepped closer, the key still glowing faintly. I stopped being your victim. That was the turning point. The night I stopped fearing the curse and started wielding it. Ethan thought power came from possession, from control. But father was right all along. True power came from truth, and truth always demands a price. And I was ready to make him pay it. I could feel the mansion watching me as I planned. Each portrait seemed to lean in, waiting. My hands shook the first time I wrote the plan down, not from fear but from the cold clarity that comes before you strike. Ethan had erased me on paper and in law. He had dressed his betrayal in boardroom signatures and investor smiles. So I would meet him on both fronts, the tangible and the supernatural. My revenge needed to be surgical, expose the lies, strip away his facade, then let the curse finish the part that law could not touch. Step 1, gather the proof. I began where Ethan had been sloppy. He had forged the will, but forged documents leave fingerprints of arrogance. I visited the docks at dawn and found Maria, an old clerk who'd worked for Wynter Shipping when father still walked the office. She remembered every ledger ink stain and every courier who delivered signatures. Over stale tea and trembling hands, she told me about a courier who had carried the new will into the estate 2 days before father died, a man with a limp and a tobacco habit. Maria's description didn't match any employee on the company roster. It matched one of Ethan's late-night guests, the foreign man I'd heard on the phone. I dug into the archive and found postal receipts hidden between father's account books, a paid delivery from an offshore legal firm. The return address matched the investor's shell company. Proof, small and stubborn, began to stack: receipts, a burnt corner of a notarized page in father's old fireplace. Ethan's panic had led him to try to destroy things, and a ledger entry showing a transfer the night before father's death to an account only the investors could access. Step 2. Build allies. Alone I was a ghost, with allies I became a force. I sought out Naomi, a forensic document analyst who owed father a favor from years ago when he saved her family's home from repossession. She agreed to examine the will and signatures. Her report would be technical, sterile, and impossible to dismiss, ink composition inconsistent with the attorney's stationery, pressure marks that showed a traced hand. I also tracked down a junior banker who had handled the transfer, a nervous kid who, if prompted, would talk about the unusual wire and the insistence that the payment be routed through Erebos Maritime's accounts. Step 3. Corral the witnesses. Truth needs a stage. I quietly gathered Maria, Naomi, the junior banker, and the courier's partial fingerprint we'd found on a matchbox in father's office. Each would piece a strand of the tapestry Ethan had woven. I prepared their statements, rehearsed them with them in a low, steady voice so they would not be rattled when cameras arrived. Step 4. Weaponize perception. Ethan thrived on image. He had bought the town's favor with donations and appearances, he controlled narratives. So I took the one thing he could not buy: certainty. I leaked Naomi's preliminary analysis to an independent local journalist I trusted, timing it for the night of the charity gala where Ethan planned to formalize the merger and parade his new title. The journalist loved spectacle, he promised a live post and a booth at the gala entrance. The idea of Ethan's smug face being interrupted by a factual collapse tasted like victory. Step 5. Set the supernatural trap. Father's letters and the vault key had shown me that the curse responded to truth and blood. It recognized betrayal. I didn't plan to use it recklessly, I intended to turn Ethan's ritual back on him. In the cellar I placed the last unburned page of father's journal within the vault's line of sight, a page that named the conditions of balance and the phrase that called the spirit to reflect the betrayer. I arranged, too, for the photograph of myself, the same photograph Ethan had offered the spirit to be visible when the vault pulsed. If the curse fed on betrayal, it would find him alone in his hypocrisy. The night of the gala, everything felt like a held breath. Ethan arrived like a conqueror, applauded by men in suits who thought they'd purchased destiny. He stepped to the podium to announce the merger, the cameras framed him perfectly. I watched from the back, Naomi's report burning a hole in my bag, Maria's trembling hand in mine. I released the journalist's post, the first alerts began to buzz through the room. Phones lit like a field of small suns. Ethan's smile flickered as rumors of forged documents spread through his circle. He still controlled the stage for now. Then the banker who had been on my side slipped into the room, sidled up to the caterer's pass, and whispered the account details to the journalist. The live feed cut to a headline across the bottom of every screen in the hall: Wynter merger tied to offshore transfers, document authenticity questioned. Ethan's jaw clenched. He laughed, which only made him look smaller. Investors murmured. The mayor, who had accepted his donations, swallowed hard. The first trap clicked. But Ethan was not finished. He called on his legal team, on old family allies, and on the town's charitable gratitude. He mouthed the right words: smile, denial, deflection. He still appeared in control. The courtroom hadn't yet convened, the curse hadn't yet moved. Back at the mansion, the vault pulsed once, like a watchful heartbeat. The photograph I'd placed faced inward as if waiting for its cue. The supernatural trap and the legal squeeze had begun to close, but neither would finish without the other. As the gala spiraled, Ethan left early, furious and impatient. He returned to the mansion confident he could contain whatever scandal brewed with money and threats. He still felt in control. I watched him go into the cellar with a quiet, terrible calm. I had set every piece in motion. The town's trust, the forensic truth, the investor unease, the vault's ancient hunger. The final reckoning was no longer some abstract hope, it was a clock winding down. Ethan walked into the room he'd thought he'd mastered, and the house held its breath with me. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through the cracks you thought were sealed. That night, every plan I had woven finally converged: truth, curse, and consequence all waiting for the same heartbeat to strike. The sky above Ravenshade was a bruised storm. The old Wynter mansion sat like a shadow against the sea, its windows flickering with a light that wasn't quite fire, wasn't quite human. Inside, Ethan thought he was alone. But I was already there. Watching. Waiting. He had come home to bury evidence, to shut the vault one last time and silence every whisper of his crime. He didn't know the curse no longer obeyed him. He stormed into the study, phone pressed to his ear. I said, handle it, he barked. I don't care what the journalists found, freeze their accounts, shut them down. I stepped from the dark corner, my voice calm. You can't silence the dead, Ethan. He turned sharply, eyes wild. You. He looked half deranged, half relieved. You shouldn't exist. Yet here I am. He laughed, but it sounded more like a tremor. You think a few forged receipts will ruin me? I own this town, Lara. Every judge, every board member. Not anymore. I tossed the folder onto father's old desk. Inside were Naomi's reports, Maria's signed affidavit, the banker's confession, all notarized and sent to the press that morning. Ethan's smirk faltered. What did you do? I reminded them who the real Winter heir is. I stepped closer, my voice lowering to a blade's edge. You didn't just steal my inheritance. You desecrated father's name, forged his death, erased me, and offered me as sacrifice to a curse you couldn't control. Now every lie you built will consume you. The vault below began to hum a deep, throbbing vibration that shook the floorboards beneath us. Ethan's expression shifted from anger to panic. You triggered it, he whispered. You opened the vault. I nodded. I didn't have to open it. I just had to tell the truth. The lights flickered. The portraits rattled. Wind tore through the hallways, carrying father's voice like a ghostly echo. The blood that betrays its own shall live the life it stole, forever cursed to be what it destroyed. Ethan stumbled back as the vault door downstairs groaned open. A glow crimson and alive spilled through the stairwell like rising dawn. No, he shouted, racing for the cellar. I followed, my footsteps echoing his descent. The vault chamber pulsed with energy, symbols shifting across the walls like veins of fire. Inside the vault, the shadowy figure had returned, larger now, clearer. I could see the outline of a face, a mirror of Ethan's own, twisted with fury. Ethan screamed, You can't take me. I command you. But the curse only whispered. You are the command. You are the curse. He tried to flee, but every step forward only led him closer to the vault's mouth. His reflection began to peel away from his body, an exact copy, shimmering and sickly, screaming in unison. I stood at the threshold, the key in my hand glowing white hot. This is what greed does, Ethan. It doesn't build, it consumes. He fell to his knees, reaching toward me. Lara, please, we can fix this together. You don't understand what it'll do. I understand perfectly, I said, tears burning behind my eyes. It takes the one who betrays blood, and gives them what they crave most. The reflection lunged and merged with him, bone snapping, skin twisting, light flooding the room. Ethan's scream was swallowed by the roar of wind and flame as the vault door slammed shut. When the silence returned, only his ring remained cracked, cold, lifeless. But revenge wasn't finished. The next morning, Ravenshade awoke to headlines that shattered Ethan's empire. Winter shipping fraud exposed, CEO implicated in forgery and murder probe. His investors pulled out. His accounts were seized. The media flooded the mansion gates, demanding answers. And when they couldn't find Ethan Winter, they found me. I stepped into the light that day not as a ghost, but as the rightful heir. At the courthouse, I handed over the evidence, calm and poised. The will was declared fraudulent, the company returned to my name. The judge looked up at me and said, Miss Winter, it's as if your father knew this moment would come. Maybe he did. Because as the proceedings ended, I noticed something on the courtroom wall, a framed portrait of the original Winter patriarch, Edmund. Behind the glass, for just a second, I saw Ethan's face flicker inside the reflection, screaming silently. The curse hadn't killed him. It had trapped him within his own legacy. That night, I returned to the cliffside. The sea below churned violently, waves crashing against the rocks. I held Ethan's broken ring and father's vault key in my palm. The storm winds tore at my hair, but I felt no fear. I'm ending this, I whispered. Our bloodline's curse ends here with truth, not greed. I threw the ring into the ocean, and the moment it vanished beneath the waves, the sky cleared. The mansion behind me went still, silent for the first time in centuries. I turned toward it and whispered, Rest, Father. For a long time, I just stood there watching the dawn break over Ravenshade, painting the horizon gold. And though the curse was finally silent, I could almost hear Father's voice again, soft and proud. The family curse was never about blood, Lara. It was about choice. And you chose justice. I smiled faintly. Because the curse didn't die with Ethan. It obeyed me now. Curses don't end with fire or blood, they end when someone finally chooses truth over silence. Morning rose over Ravenshade for the first time without thunder. The old Winter mansion stood still, its broken windows catching the soft gold of sunrise like glass eyes finally opening. For generations, this house had been a tomb of greed, secrets, and whispers, but that morning, it finally breathed again. I, Lara Wynter, the daughter everyone tried to erase, walked through its hollow corridors as the rightful heir. Dust floated in the air like falling snow, the ghosts of the past finally settling. Downstairs, journalists still camped at the gate, waiting for a statement from the missing Winter heir. Naomi called from the city. You did it, she said. The curse, the fraud, everything's public now. They found Ethan's offshore accounts, the documents you leaked went viral. You're free, Lara. Completely. Free. The word didn't sound real yet. It had always felt like a dream dangling just out of reach until now. I stood in the study where Ethan once sat with his forged smile and rehearsed charm. His portrait, once hanging above father's, now lay shattered on the floor. I didn't pick it up. Some legacies weren't meant to be mended. Over the next weeks, everything Ethan built crumbled piece by piece. His companies went bankrupt, his mansion seized. The world called it the Wynter scandal, a story of greed devouring its own. His allies turned on him, his name became a warning. And yet, no one found him. Not a trace. The tabloids speculated he fled the country, that he was hiding, that he'd died. But I knew the truth. I saw it every night in my dreams, the vault, glowing red, his reflection pounding at the walls, screaming to get out. It wasn't death that claimed him. It was the curse, the one he awakened and tried to control. Ethan wasn't gone. He was contained. I rebuilt Wynter Holdings from the ashes, stripping away the corruption Ethan buried in the books. For once, the company wasn't built on secrets, it was built on transparency. I used the fortune father left me to start the Wynter Foundation, funding orphanages, education, and housing for those crushed by our family's legacy. People called it poetic justice. Reporters wrote about the cursed heiress who turned her family's darkness into light. But I didn't do it for them. I did it for her father. For Naomi. For the little girl who once stood outside this mansion, watching her brother steal her birthright with a smile. One night, months later, I walked again to the cliffs, the same place where I'd cast Ethan's ring into the sea. The waves were calm this time, the sky filled with silver stars instead of storm clouds. As I stood there, I felt it, a presence behind me. The air grew colder, and I turned. There, reflected in the dark window of the mansion, was Ethan. His eyes hollow, his mouth twisted in silent rage, pounding against glass that wasn't really there. I didn't flinch. You wanted immortality, I whispered to the reflection. Now you have it, trapped inside the legacy you destroyed. The reflection shattered like a mirror breaking under pressure. The curse was no longer hungry. It was satisfied. After that night, I had the vault sealed permanently. No one would ever open it again. The curse, the blood pact, the lies, they would remain buried beneath Wynter grounds, exactly where they belonged. But I kept one thing, father's key. I wear it on a chain around my neck now, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. A reminder that truth is heavier than gold, and that silence is what keeps curses alive. Weeks later, I stood on a podium at the company's reopening, cameras flashing, people cheering. I took a deep breath and spoke, my voice steady. Our family was known for power, but we forgot the cost. We hoarded wealth, not wisdom. We silenced the truth, not lies. But today, that ends. Today, Wynter isn't a curse, it's a promise. The crowd erupted. Reporters shouted my name. Naomi stood in the front row, smiling through tears. And for the first time, I didn't feel haunted. I felt whole. Later, as the night fell over Ravenshade again, I sat by the fire, holding an old photo of father and me. The flames flickered, and for just a moment, I heard his voice again, warm, calm, proud. You broke it, Lara. You freed us all. A tear slipped down my cheek, but this time, it wasn't from pain. It was release. The Wynter curse had ended not with death, but with truth. Ethan was gone, but his shadow would forever warn others what greed could cost. And as I looked out over the dark sea, I whispered the words that closed generations of torment. He tried to own the family fortune, but became its prisoner instead. The wind howled through the cliffs, carrying the final echo of the Wynter name, no longer a curse, but a warning.